So this is a video I wanted to make for a long time. I just didn't know if I wanted to make it because I'm technically opening the floodgates when I'm making this type of video. Um, just as a heads up, I might do a lot of editing, so there might be some parts where I kind of cut out and cut my voice off, and then I move on to the next topic because I don't want to like. This is not one of those videos where I want to freestyle it. This is one of those videos where I want to make sure I edit things so I can get all my thoughts down and everything that I want to say. So there might be a little bit more editing in this video. Also, most of the things I say in this video are going to be my opinion. They're opinion based. So if you disagree with something, feel free to put it down in the comment and let me know your thoughts. So let's jump straight into this topic because it's probably the most controversial, modern dating. I think the biggest one that I see is a lot of people kind of disagree with the hookup culture. Some people 100% disagree with hookup culture. They think it's evil. I'm kind of 75, 25%. I used to be like 100%, but I'm like 75, 25. 25% I think is like there's some value to it, and then 75% is like, yeah, for the most part it's not. I don't think is really good for the general population, just people in general that are trying to have more serious long-term relationships. Um, but the reason why I have that extra 25% is because at least in hookup culture, people are getting together, and maybe they're not getting together for the right. Well, I shouldn't say right reasons. Right, everybody has their reasons for why they want to date someone or just have some fun. But for the most part, I guess that's why they call it hookup culture, right? You're kind of just having fun. But like I said, right, at least you're getting some amount of experience. There's some people out there that have already given up on relationships and dating as a whole, and I do not blame them because getting rejected over and over again. I think only someone can handle like that much to a certain point where it just takes a toll on their mentality and they need to take a break, which is totally understandable, right? Another thing that's really important as well when it comes to relationships is things like harassment and sexual abuse, right? Those things are not okay. Those things are not appropriate, and so there's a good reason why there may be a percentage out there. I don't know if it's a small or large percentage, but there's definitely people out there for sure that have experienced some level of that, and that might even cause PTSD. So they have their own reasons for why they don't want to date, and maybe they should just take a massive break, like a couple of years off of trying to find someone, right? Because of that. So that's another reason for why dating in general can be kind of scary, right? Um, and I think another problem as well is that I think there's kind of this people always like to over exaggerate things, in my opinion, at least. And now someone does like this. And what I mean is, getting rejected really is not the end of the world, guys. When I experienced my first rejection, it hurt for like a couple of weeks, maybe even like 3 or 4 weeks, right? It took a very long time for me to go over it. Um, and at some point, I managed to let go of it, right, and kind of move on because I realized what I most what I realized from that rejection was the fact that it wasn't was it anger? I think maybe I experienced some anger, but it really wasn't me just for the most part. I don't think it was anger. There's a lot of like sadness and kind of like disappointed. I wasn't really angry, but I was kind of like depressed, I guess is what you could say. Um, but the thing about that as well is, there are a couple things that I did that I thought I did right. But relationships and meeting new people is a lot more complicated than that, right? It's just because you're a nice person, right? I got this girl roses, and I made food for her and stuff like that, and I was being nice to her, and I didn't understand like how am I doing all this for you, and and then all of a sudden like randomly when I ask you out, you say you don't want to go or something like that. I can't remember what she said exactly, but something like that, right? So I was like, I don't get it, right? But the thing about that, and that's also another hard part when it comes to relationships and meeting people is you might like someone 100% and then the other person only likes you 50%, right? And that's really a hard relationship because that means someone else is putting more effort to it and someone else is like really really interested in you, and the person that you're talking to is just not as interested as you are with the way that you are with them, right? So that makes it even more hard. So relationships and dating in terms of that is also really difficult. But in terms of rejection and stuff, there's some people that are able to change and get over it, and there's some people that just aren't able to change and get over it. I do believe that, for example, you see this happen a lot, man. When a guy gets rejected, they might say something like, "Oh man, all women are the same," or a girl or woman gets rejected by a guy or man or whatever, right? And then she says vice versa, right? All men or boys are all the same, right? So after that one bad experience, all of a sudden they kind of group everyone together. And it's the same way, kind of like Gen Z. Right now, Gen Z has a lot of YouTube videos. They have a lot of negative videos on Gen Z in terms of reputation when it comes to this stuff like dating and workforce and work ethic and all this stuff, which is kind of unfortunate, man, because there are people that are around my age in their 20s, maybe, I'm technically older Gen Z, right? Born 2003, so I'm 22. I guess I'm considered older Gen Z, right? There are guys and girls probably that are around my age, maybe slightly older than me, that are having a lot of success out there, and some people even have families. So the idea that every person that's in this current generation of Gen Z, at least, because obviously Gen Z is not the only generation, right? We have millennials and Gen Alpha and other stuff like that, right? Other generations as well, or Gen X, I believe. Yeah, that's one. So just kind of looping everyone together and giving a whole entire generation a bad reputation, in my opinion, at least, is not fair. That's my take, though. But yeah, that's kind of. I'm not gonna go on to like dating apps and what I think about it, blah blah blah, because then, and I've already talked now for 6 minutes about this, which I think is fair enough. That's just my opinion, at least. That summarize the main point that I want to get across with that one is don't you need to have like a positive attitude when it comes to like dating and relationship. You can't have one bad experience and you let that one bad experience just automatically just dictate the rest of your experiences. That's just not going to lead you. I don't know. Going back to said, right? I had the energy. That's the reason why I can relate to that. I had the energy before. It's not a good type of energy that you want when it comes to relationships with dating. If you want to find someone, in my opinion, at least. So obviously, I'm not saying that after you have one bad experience, that means you can't feel something. That's totally normal, right? That's what makes us human. Is we feel things like emotions, but after some point, you kind of just want to let it go, and you want to move on, right? And kind of start a new attempt, or whatever you want to call it, right? A new motivation or new mindset when you're going back into the dating scene or whatever. So yeah, so that's my point for relationships. And next, we're gonna go on to let's talk about maybe employment and work and stuff like that. Okay, so this one also might be slightly controversial because I'm gonna dig into something which a lot of people don't really want to talk about, but I will talk about it because I think that I have a couple things I want to say about this. So I believe the unemployment rate for Gen Z is 25 or 3%. That's a statistic that was shown on some type of article or somewhere. I think maybe on a YouTube video I watched. Um, One of the big reasons why a lot of people believe that this is happening is due to immigration and international students and immigrants. And unfortunately, there's a lot of not so nice, not so nice things, let's just say, that a lot of people say about these immigrants and international students. Um, Like they say that they're like lazy or they don't want to adapt, and I can see that to some extent, right? However, I do because right now I'm in a plumbing program. I'm the trades, and I have a decent amount of international students and immigrants, or well, actually immigrants, but international students at least that were in my programs, and these guys are far from what the stereotypes say about these international students. Like they're lazy or they just want to come here and whatever and just get a job and then get housing or whatever benefits, whatever they say. I don't know. I don't really believe that because going back to say what I saw in my classes is far from that. So I don't think I 100% agree with the fact that all these immigrants and international students are lazy and don't want to work or whatever. But here's what I will say though is I don't want to like 100% blame the government. But I think the government in some way is kind of ripping off some of these immigrants and international students because they come here because they want to have a better future in education and in terms of, I don't want to call it like lifestyle and living, in terms of like, going to right, life. But the crazy part is if you see the international fees of like any university or even college, right, whether it's in Canada or even the States maybe, they're charging. I'm not from the States, so I don't know what they charge in the States, but they charge a lot of money. They charge like triple, maybe double, triple, maybe quadruple amount of what a domestic student would need for like the tuition of a, I don't know, 1 year course, 2 year program, whatever, 4 year degree program, whatever it is. They charge a lot. Let's just put it that way. And on top of that, they come here and they realize harsh conditions of Canada because Canada's a cold country right during the winter times. And on top of that is also, going back to said, the cost of living here is also insane. So they come here and go into this, right? They travel and they make all these sacrifices because they are making a lot of sacrifices, right? They can't see their families from their homeland. So they come here for a better future, and then the government kind of just, kind of just, I don't know, I want to say like lied to them, but let's just say it's not good. I should leave it at that. So that's my opinions, at least when it comes to like that type of stuff in that area specifically. Another thing that I also will touch on as well is in terms of the wages and cost of living. I do believe that because there's a lot of videos that you see on like even YouTube Shorts and stuff like that say that like Gen Z is really entitled and they don't want to work or they want higher pay. As someone that's in the trades, I got a job offer as a skilled laborer just recently. I couldn't take it because I'm technically still in school, but they wanted me to work 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., which I would gladly take. So that's like a maybe 10-hour shift from Tuesday to Saturdays, and they probably pay me minimum wage. Some people would take it for sure, and then some people definitely wouldn't take it. There'd be like, no way in hell I'm working 10 hours Tuesday to Saturday for $18 minimum wage, right? There's just no way I can do that. But I am someone who has a different type of mentality because I realize how like hard the job market is right now. So I'm willing to take a job like that, even if they don't pay me, more than that, right? Which is okay with me. So that's one of the things when it comes to jobs, at least in my opinion, is you really cannot be too picky with what kind of job you get. That being said, though, I do agree to some extent that what some of these companies and jobs and whatever careers you want to say, or occupations or whatever are paying you are kind of like not the greatest. I can agree with that to some extent, right? Because right now, the cost of inflation, the bills, and even just groceries are really crazy, right? I buy groceries twice a week, and I can tell you right now that it is pretty expensive, and that's not even me buying it for my family. That's just me buying food for myself, right? So it is really expensive, which is the reason why a lot of people want these wages to increase, and why they're demanding like even some people even are demanding like more balance in terms of work, right? They don't want their whole entire life to be work. They're demanding work-life balance, which I can agree to. Obviously, I'm a little bit more biased because I'm in the trades, and for me, I like that's my thing, right? That's the reason why I'm in the trades is I'm good. I prefer working my hands, and I like working hard. That's kind of always been my thing, or at least that's what I found out about myself. So when it comes to working those 8-10 hour shifts, I'm able to do that. But for some other people, they're not going to be able to do that. So it's really important to understand what type of person you are. Are you someone that wants to work 40 hours a week? Are you someone that wants to work, I don't know, 45 or 50 hours a week, right? Something crazy like that, right? You have to understand what type of lifestyle do you want to have and what type of hours that you want to work. So that's my little spiel there in terms of workforce. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is the next, or I said next, but upcoming generation. Okay, so the last one, which is an interesting one that I want to bring up that I've thought about for a little bit, is like I already mentioned before, right? You have millennials and you have, I believe, the one above millennials is Gen X. And then before Gen Z is Gen Alpha, which will be because, I'm technically in the generation of Gen Z, right? We are kind of like the future. So a lot of Gen Alpha is kind of going to look up to Gen Z in a way, which kind of means that, like I said, right, we are the future. We have to be the leaders because we're going to be the ones that are going to be entering the workforce and whatever, right? And changing the future, right? Or whatever, changing the world, whatever cliche saying that they said in school, whatever. Um, there's kind of, I don't know, because the problem with all these issues that you see, because there's a lot of YouTube contents around it, it could be just be propaganda for all I know, right? But the reason why I believe that is not all propaganda is because you have things like going to say you have statistics, you have articles now. There's even been news outlets that talk about stuff like this. So there's just no way, in my opinion, at least, that this is just only like YouTube content and it's just kind of spread like false or fake news. No, I don't think so. So I think there is kind of I think a lot of people that are out there are feeling kind of like hopeless because of going to all the things that I just touched on previously, right? The economy, maybe dating scene, job market, inflation, and other stuff like that, and whatever else stuff is going on around the world, like war and stuff. But one thing that keeps me and trying not to like fall in that type of mentality of wanting to like give up on myself is the fact that, going back to what I said, right? Gen Alpha is going to be the generation that's going to be coming before Gen Z, and they are, in a way, kind of like depending on us, right? Because we are the future of the workforce and stuff like this. So that's the reason why, I don't want to, in a way, like set a bad example for myself. That's another thing that also motivates me as well to keep on trying. Is that, what is the up and coming next generation going to think of me, right? I don't want them to think like I'm a loser or something like that, right? I want to set a good example for myself. So that's one important thing that I wanted to mention as well, is that because a lot of the time, I think why people say that the generation that I was born into, which is Gen Z considered, right? Because I'm born 2003, so I'm technically an older Gen Z because I'm 22, right? I'm on the older side of Gen Z. Um, People say that Gen Z is very entitled, right? They're very people in my current generation are entitled. Um, and so, what that kind of means is all about them, right? Their whole entire life revolves around them. Um, and to be fair, I think there's a good reason for why this is happening, right? Because going back to what I said, it's really difficult right now with the current circumstances that we're in to not focus on ourselves, because we're all kind of just trying to survive and find a job or whatever, and take care of ourselves properly, and becoming adults, right, is not that easy. Um, that being said, though, it's also really important to understand that we're not the only generation, right? A lot of people. That's the reason why all this entitlement thing comes from. Is like everything is about me and me and me and only, right? I'm the only important person in the world, but that's just not true, right? You have the upcoming, right? Upcoming generation, Gen Alpha. Then you already have millennials and Gen X, right? So everybody is in this together. Uh, a lot of guys can bash all the girls and women that they want to, for different reasons, right? Because you hear that a lot in dating scene and everything like that, right? And then vice versa, a lot of the women or girls can bash all the guys and boys and men or whatever. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really help anybody. We're not really getting anywhere. So that's what I'm getting with this kind of point here is when it comes down to it, we all need to work together because we're all in this together. There's no point to have all this banter between each other. It's just kind of silly. So hope you guys like this video. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next time.